Nobody saw this coming. When the first photos dropped, fans had to do a double take, because that didn't look like Jonah Hill. The familiar face from Superbad and The Wolf of Wall Street was suddenly gone, replaced by a bald head, a thick silver beard, and a completely different energy. Social media exploded almost instantly with people asking the same question. What happened to Jonah Hill? This wasn't just another Hollywood haircut or a quick role makeover. This transformation feels intentional, dramatic, and tied to something much bigger than a single movie. Especially when you realize it's for a new Apple TV project that's already surrounded by secrecy, big names, and quiet controversy. But here's the part no one's really talking about. This change didn't come out of nowhere. It connects to years of pressure, public criticism, and Jonah's complicated relationship with fame itself. And once you look closer, this new look starts to feel less like a role, and more like a statement. And what happened next only made fans even more uneasy. This transformation isn't random. It's tied directly to a movie that's already raising eyebrows in Hollywood. The project is called Outcome, an upcoming Apple TV film that's being kept surprisingly low-key for something with this kind of star power. Jonah Hill isn't just acting in it either. He co-wrote it and helped shape the story himself, which immediately makes this feel more personal. The film sits in a dark comedy space, but don't expect anything light or goofy. Outcome revolves around fame, power, and what happens when a global superstar's carefully built image starts to crack. At the center of it all is a celebrity crisis that spirals out of control, dragging everyone around it into chaos. And then there's the cast. Keanu Reeves headlines the film as a larger-than-life public figure, with Cameron Diaz making a rare return to acting alongside Matt Bomer. That alone would normally dominate headlines. Yet somehow Jonah's role and appearance are what everyone keeps fixating on. Because the more people learn about Outcome, the clearer it becomes that this movie isn't just about Hollywood on the surface. It's about exposure, control, and the uncomfortable side of fame most stars never admit to publicly. And that's where Jonah Hill's transformation starts to feel a lot less cosmetic, and a lot more deliberate. The first thing people noticed wasn't the movie title or the cast, it was Jonah himself. Gone was the familiar hairstyle, the clean-cut look, even the playful on-screen energy fans were used to. In its place was a shaved head, a thick, graying beard, and a noticeably leaner frame that made him almost unrecognizable at first glance. Photos from the set spread fast, and the reaction was instant. Some fans thought it was heavy prosthetics. Others assumed it was a body double. A few even questioned if the images were edited. That's how drastic the change looked. This wasn't a subtle adjustment, it was a full reset of his public image. What made it even more striking was how intentional it felt. Every detail of the look seemed calculated, stripped down, and serious. No flashy styling. No Hollywood polish. Just a raw, almost worn-down presence that fits the darker tone of Outcome. And for longtime followers of Jonah Hill, this hit differently. Because his appearance has always been something the public fixated on, criticized, analyzed, and mocked for years. Which makes this transformation feel less like a costume. And more like Jonah taking control of the narrative in a way no one expected. On the surface, this looks like another actor changing his appearance for a role. But with Jonah Hill, it's never been that simple. For years, his body, his weight, and his looks were treated like public property, dissected in interviews, turned into punchlines, and splashed across headlines whether he wanted it or not. Jonah has openly talked about how that constant scrutiny messed with his confidence and sense of self. He's admitted that even praise about his appearance felt uncomfortable, because it still kept the focus on his body instead of his work. So when fans saw this new look, many didn't just see a character. They saw someone finally stepping away from expectations entirely. This transformation doesn't feel designed to impress or appeal. It feels deliberately uncomfortable. Almost like he's stripping away the version of himself the public thinks it owns, and replacing it with something colder, quieter, and harder to label. That alone makes it stand out in an industry obsessed with image control. And here's where things get even more interesting. Jonah didn't disappear and come back with this look by accident. He chose this moment, this project, and this story to reintroduce himself. Which raises a bigger question. Is this just a role, or is Jonah Hill quietly redefining how he wants to exist in Hollywood from here on out? At its core, Outcome isn't just telling a story, it's pulling apart the illusion of celebrity piece by piece. The film follows a massively famous public figure whose carefully managed image starts to collapse after a private situation threatens to go public. What begins as damage control quickly turns into paranoia, power plays, and desperation behind closed doors. Instead of focusing on red carpets and fame at its peak, Outcome zooms in on what happens when control slips away. The movie explores how far powerful people will go to protect their reputation, and who gets sacrificed in the process. Loyalty becomes transactional. Morals get blurred. And the truth becomes something everyone's trying to outrun. Jonah Hill's role sits right in the middle of that chaos. His character isn't flashy or heroic. He's embedded in the machinery that keeps celebrity culture running, watching things unravel from the inside. It's quiet, uncomfortable, and tense in a way that mirrors real-life Hollywood scandals fans have watched play out for years. What makes the themes hit harder is how familiar they feel. Image manipulation. Media spin. Private mistakes turning into public spectacle. It's the kind of story that feels less like fiction and more like a reflection of the industry itself. And once you realize how closely these themes line up with Jonah's own complicated history with fame, the movie starts to feel personal in ways that are hard to ignore. It didn't take long for the internet to do what it always does. Within hours of the photos surfacing, comment sections were flooded with shock, confusion, and non-stop speculation. Fans were asking if Jonah was wearing prosthetics, if the images were old, or if he'd quietly stepped away from Hollywood altogether. Some didn't even believe it was him at first. Clips, screenshots, and side-by-side comparisons started spreading across X, Reddit, and TikTok, turning his new look into instant viral fuel. Memes popped up, debates broke out, and timelines filled with people arguing over whether this was his boldest move yet or a sign of something deeper going on behind the scenes. What really pushed it over the edge was how divided the reactions were. One side praised the transformation as fearless and refreshing, calling it proof that Jonah no longer cares about Hollywood approval. The other side worried it signaled burnout or another retreat from the spotlight. And that tension only kept the conversation alive longer. The silence from Jonah himself made everything louder. No interviews. No explanations. No clarifications. Just the images, and the internet filling in the blanks. And as the buzz kept growing, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was the kind of reaction that usually signals a turning point. This moment could mark a real turning point in Jonah Hill's career. For the past few years he's been noticeably selective, stepping away from constant press, avoiding the usual Hollywood circuit, and focusing more on projects that give him creative control instead of mass appeal. Outcome fits that pattern perfectly. Unlike his earlier breakout roles built around comedy and charm, this project positions Jonah in a darker, more restrained space. He's not chasing likability or laughs anymore. He's leaning into complexity, discomfort, and stories that don't need audience approval to work. That shift alone signals a major redefinition of how he wants to be seen. There's also the timing. After directing deeply personal projects like Mid-90s and Stutz, Jonah returning on screen with such a drastic look feels intentional, almost like he's drawing a line between his past public image and whatever comes next. It's less about reinvention and more about reclaiming control. Hollywood careers usually move in predictable arcs. This one doesn't. And that unpredictability is exactly why people are paying attention. Because if outcome lands the way insiders expect, this transformation won't just be remembered as a viral photo moment. It'll be seen as the point where Jonah Hill quietly reshaped his place in the industry for good. The release date for Outcome is still a few months away, but the buzz shows no signs of slowing down. Every new photo, rumor, or teaser clip adds another layer to the story, keeping fans guessing and speculating about what Jonah Hill is really trying to say with this transformation. Is this just a one-time shock for a single role, or the start of a full reinvention? Will Jonah continue to take on darker, riskier projects that challenge Hollywood norms, or is this moment a rare glimpse behind the curtain? Whatever happens, one thing is clear. Jonah Hill has grabbed the spotlight on his own terms, and the conversation won't fade once the credits roll. Fans and critics alike will be watching closely, dissecting every choice, every look, and every performance. So the question remains, are we witnessing the birth of a new chapter in Jonah Hill's career, or just the first act of a story that's about to get even more unpredictable? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. Nobody is going to forget this transformation anytime soon.